Good evening and welcome to this evening's council meeting for February 10th. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Father, we bow before you, and we pause at the beginning of this February council meeting. We express our desire for your guidance. We need your wisdom as we review. We desire to make the best decisions that honor you and benefit our community. We thank you for this fine group of leaders, which ultimately you have called and appointed to this responsible office. We pray that you would encourage our leaders with your guidance. We pray that you would bring this council a unity of forward advancement, even though we may have differences of view. Use any differing perspectives to bring about balanced decisions, resulting in the best for all concerned. Remind each council member of their God-given responsibility entrusted to them first by you and also by the residents of this community. And we pray that you would empower them to serve you through their leadership of this community. Guide all of us as residents to honor you and also our leaders. We pray this all in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Call this meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Mayor Tinnerman?
Here.
Cobb?
Here.
Francis?
Here.
Willis is absent. Fogel?
Here.
Dorman?
Here.
And Miller?
Certificate of the clerk. The following certificate of the clerk of the council to the presiding officer of the council of the municipality of West Milton was read. The undersigned certified that all requirements to notice and notification has been done or attempted to be done in compliance with Council Rule 3, dated February 10th, 2015. Clerk of Council, Linda L. Cantrell. Don't believe we had any absences at our workshop. Can we have them?
Sarah.
Oh, Sarah was
Make a motion to
absent.
excuse Councilmember Sarah Kopp for the January 27th workshop.
Thank you. Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Fogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Tinnerman.
Yes.
Mayor, I should have said something during roll call. Vice Mayor Willis got a hold of me this afternoon and said she'd be unable to attend.
Thank you. Is there a motion to excuse Susan for this evening's meeting?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Fogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
And Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Tinnerman.
Yes. You would have received in your packet council meeting minutes from January 13th. Is there any discussion on these or a motion to accept these minutes as written?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Fogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Tinnerman.
Yes. You would have also received your meeting minutes for the workshop meeting, January 27th. That would also include the special meeting minutes as well. Is there any discussion or a motion to accept these minutes as written?
Motion to accept the minutes as written. Second.
Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Fogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Tinnerman.
Yes. Mr. Klein, is there any correspondence to council this evening?
Yes, Mayor, just one from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control, letting us know the new owners of Izzy's Drive-Thru over on 571. Hills Camp and Kremer is the company name. They're requested to transfer a current C2 license that they currently own in Union to their Izzy's Drive-Thru. no legislative action is needed. However, there is a part here that we typically always get if we would like to have a public hearing on this, this recommendation. I've spoke with the police department. We do not feel that's necessary, but a motion to either have the hearing or not to have the hearing would be appropriate.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to not hold a hearing for the transfer of the license.
Roll call, please.
Hop. Yes. Francis.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Dorman.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Mayor Tinnerman.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are there any comments from citizens regarding tonight's legislation that we're passing this evening, or voting on this evening?
My name's Alice Martin. I want to know where the agenda is. There used to be an agenda provided for every council meeting to the public, and I don't see any. Am I missing something?
There are normally some out there. Was not aware of that. Thank you.
I don't come very often.
That's okay. That's good. We like visitors. We do. We can wait for a minute if you guys want to see the agenda first, so that you know if you have questions over what is being discussed this evening.
Sorry, I didn't know the agenda wasn't out.
That's okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you guys sit and wait.
Oh, not at all.
No problem.
Right, yeah,
I didn't know.
yeah. I've been doing that, honey, for 20
I figured
years.
that.
But that's okay, I appreciate you telling me.
I assume so. I don't visit our website very often. We should, if we don't.
Okay. So that's something that we could,
But we normally always, Alice is right, we normally always put a stack at the end of that table, so I don't know why they're not there tonight.
I haven't been here for a while.
And I don't think they're on the agenda's on, but I know the minutes and everything else go.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, sir.
Reading them. Now, if they have questions on what's going on this evening. Yes. Yes. So with those provided, if you've had a minute to read, does anyone have any comments or questions on what the resolutions are for this evening?
Yes, ordinance to amend section 52-116 water rates. Ordinance to amend section 51-22 sewer rates. What are those?
Yes.
What's the
We
name?
have the water and sewer's already high as it is, so
What,
Name and address.
we're not, would you state your name and address just for record?
name, Chris Jones, 11 Dewar Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, since you don't have the full ordinances and resolutions, the water rates is, let's see, which is the first one? The first one is the delinquent accounts. The water rates and the sewer rates are for out-of-town residents primarily. Let me make sure I'm
Well,
stating
no.
that correctly. The
No, no.
sewage is.
No, it's actually to, it's a first reading of an ordinance to dissolve the credit for those who are delinquent, or not delinquent, I'm sorry, disability. There's a disability credit. We're one of only the very few towns that do this. We have about a half a dozen residents in town that actually get a 20% discount on their water and sewer rates if they're disabled. And it's an ordinance getting rid of that And it's in both the water and the sewer, and you can't do one ordinance for both. You have to do one for water, it's a different chapter in the code, and one for sewer. Now, the sewer does talk about rates for sewer outside of the village.
And those are 9 and 10.
I'll just add, sewer right now outside of the village, if we had any sewer rates outside, right now it's currently 100% of what sewer in the village would pay. Currently, water rates outside of the village are 130%. So those that live in like Ludlow Falls that has water, they pay 130% of what you would pay if you lived in the village limits. So now would be if eventually, or if we ever had anyone outside on sewer, they would be paying 130%. So it just puts that pricing in line with what's outside of water.
It's not changing current rates for residents inside of town for water or sewer, if that alleviates the general concern.
And not to confuse you, when you listen to the reading of the sewer ordinance, the Memorial Holiness Camp, which is out on J Road, they are on our sewer. They have a contract with us, which was negotiated years ago. They're actually at 115% and will remain at 115%.
Any other questions for this evening's resolutions or ordinances?
I do. I guess.
Could you please stand and,
Kathy, you,
yes.
it's, here in West Milton. I see a resolution to authorize a truck purchase and a radio purchase.
Yes,
We're making purchases.
yes.
We don't have any money,
We
but we're
do,
making purchases.
yes, we do continue to do our best to maintain a reasonable fleet of vehicles for the street sewer department and for the police department as well. The vehicles that are depended on to respond to emergencies in police case. Generally, you wouldn't want your police officer showing up in a 15-year-old cruiser that might have issues.
We don't actually need what we have now, really, I don't think. If we've got
Okay.
money problems, what are we thinking? I mean, I'm looking at this chart, the last 3 years, we've been going downhill quick. And what we've been discussing is let's build a new building for our police and our fire department. Let's put in a park and a water park. I mean, it's kind of like the kids today. They're belly up on their houses, their mortgage is overdue, they got credit cards, they owe on everything. So let's put a swimming pool in. And I guess, you know, where have you been for the last several years? All this has been going downhill. I didn't realize we were this bad off until I saw this today. And here we're talking about some more purchases. You know, maybe you have to live like the rest of us. We might have an old car, but we just keep it going until it does die. We don't think we have to get a brand new one until it does. If we're on a fixed income, which most of us are, either on fixed incomes or we're living out there trying to survive from day to day. And
To point out, we are the rest of us as well. We're residents, we live here, we have the same concerns and struggles that everyone else in town does. I'd like to draw a contrast between building new buildings, developing parks, which I would call more of pipeline dreams for us, and it's things that have been discussed, but have not been moved forward with because we realize that we don't have the funds and the possibilities of doing those at this time. We like to discuss the future and what we would like to see develop in town, but I'd like to contrast that to the purchase of a vehicle that we use for maintaining and keeping up what we currently have, such as streets or if they need to do, if the road crew needs to do work, keep streets clean with snow and salt.
And the other thing is, if we don't keep up on rotating out and keeping up, maintaining the fleet, then we run across a problem, which we've had, where we run into 15-year-old trucks that should have been replaced years ago, but decisions were made not to replace them and put more money into those trucks than what a new truck would have been worth or a purchase. over those 5 years, and then finally you have to buy the new truck. So it's like you bought that truck twice, and that happened previously. So those are all the things that we looked at.
Somebody want to make a comment too on the thing with the park and the water
Yeah.
pad and that?
I'll make a comment to that. One of the things when we went into negotiations on the park was always, it's a great idea, but where are we going to get the funding for the park? Because that was a big concern for everybody on this council as well as the park committee. When it came to realization that the only funds for any type of grants from the state to, or any organization at that matter, to help with no money out of pocket for the village residents, was if we owned the property. The school district wanted to sell the property for a few, like $7,000 or so an acre, and we made the decision, we're not going to purchase the park for that type of money when we don't have the money to purchase it. So, exactly. So at that point in time, we canceled our lease for that land, and that land is now maintained and solely owned by the school, if I'm not miscorrected. So that land, despite anything that's out there, is owned and operated by the school district. Where the old high school is, where the old elementary school, where the old middle school, all of that land is owned and operated completely by the school district.
How much money did we waste on architectural drawings for this park and things?
I will say that in hindsight, that is an area where, that I'm not happy with the money that we spent on it and not able to move forward with it. I would like to think that it's not complete wasted, because I don't think the idea is abandoned. I'd like to think of it more of on hold. We're still hoping to be able to develop that land. Not quite sure how we're going to get there yet.
And then it was
Correct me if
by
I'm wrong.
spending that-
Architectural was around $20,000?
No,
No,
$7,000.
no, $7,000.
$7,000. I'm sorry, I'm not on the park board, so I don't remember all the exact figures. And that is a decent amount of money. And we have, I will say that in general, on the budget, we do look through for every last $1,000 that we can find. It's every place that can be found. So, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to comment on a few issues, and I'm going to do this because I disagree with you, but I've been around a long time in this town, lived here since 1977. I'm now 75 years old and I'm a widow, and when you talk about an extremely fixed income code, this kid's on it. I know in past councils, they let things go. I attended a lot of council meetings. And a lot of things was let go, a lot of things wasn't done in the street department, in various departments and so forth. It was kind of put off, well, we'll get to it someday. And when you do that, that's like if you own a home and you don't maintain it, and 30 years later, all of a sudden you need new windows, new roof, new insulation, whatever, then you're gonna pay dearly. And this has kind of happened in our town in the past. And I'm not blaming any council, I'm just saying, I've been here since 1977, and I've seen these things happen under various other administrations and so forth. And sometimes what happens then, when you get a group that's willing to do something to catch up, they take the blunt end of everything. And as far as the park out there, I do happen to know they're looking for grants and private investors and past school members, past classes of the school, to do something out there at the old elementary primary school thing, which would benefit the whole public if they do it. And so they're looking into things because they don't have any money either. And so I don't go along with everything you guys have done. You all know that's probably why I'm here tonight. But it's just like talking about the water bill. My water bill, I'm by myself, okay? And my water bill this last month was $48. I run my dishwasher once a week. I like to soak in a hot bath maybe twice a week. I already told my kids that if they come, they only take 5-minute showers because I couldn't afford the water bill if they took the showers like they do at home, and there's 6 of them. It's really hurting me personally to pay $48 a month as a single person for a water bill here in this town, and I can't imagine what a family's paying. So I'm sure they're all hurting also. But there again, it's just like, there's things going on that I don't agree with, or I wouldn't have been here tonight, as you all well know me. But there's also things you guys are doing that I think are good and that you're trying to do. And the only thing that my comment is, and I've heard a lot, the reason I'm here tonight, I've had several phone calls, because I've always been very active, and usually I don't, I kind of mellowed in recent years, and I had several phone calls, said, why don't you go to council meeting and find out what the heck's going on and do something? Okay, so I may be bothering you the next few council meetings, just watching and seeing what's going on, but we all need to work together. We all really do need to work together, and we really need to consider, people are really struggling right now. There's no raises coming out there. Whatever Social Security raise I got this year was taken by the Medicare, whatever that junk is they take out from my Medicare. So technically, I didn't get a raise, and my Chrysler pension went down. So I'm glad my husband didn't live long enough to see that happen, because he'd been, he's probably flipping over in his grave anyway. But we just all need to be careful, people, and consider what we're doing, because there's a lot of people that are really struggling financially in our town. A lot of us are old, sorry, but we all are struggling. So, but I do know that some of the things that have happened has been because the other councils kind of put it off, they didn't do it. This is before Matt's time, before Ben took over and so forth, and before you guys became members of council. And so now you're trying to clean up and change things. So good luck, but just kind of keep in mind that we all are struggling. And keep that in mind, please.
Thank you.
Well, and that's why I'm here, is because when I saw this, that this tax credit's going to be taken away from us. I mean, how much more can we take for working people in this town? You know, if you're retired, you don't have to pay that school tax. If you're retired, you're not paying the income tax. How much more can we take? You know, we're out there, insurance is raising for us too, everything. We get a raise that goes right down the toilet for our insurance costs or something else. And it's just one thing after another. When I saw that, I thought, you know, what am I doing? You have people out there that aren't working, aren't contributing at all in our village, or retired people, and they do get the credits that they're not, and they deserve it. They deserve it, definitely. They've worked hard. But how long can we keep doing it? I mean, we're not Hyannis or the Hamptons. You know, we're people out here on minimum wage, making a little more, but we can't really make it. And I guess that's what just blew my mind when I saw that today. It's like, how much more can we pay? Our water rates are exorbitant here. You pay 40-some, I'm paying 100.
It's just me.
Yeah, well, I've got 2 others in the house. And that's conserving tremendously. So, you know, you got to weigh that.
Is there any other comments for tonight's legislation? I will point out, oh, go ahead.
I just answer your question too, because you bring up a very legitimate point about making it get by. The truck purchase and radio purchase specifically, on the truck purchase, that's going for that 1995 dump truck that we have, the little one that does the brining. If we tried to continue that another year, I wouldn't have a maintenance budget left at the end of the year. We've limped it as long as we could. And the radio purchase is actually our radios are almost a quarter of a century old. The repeater went out last year. We have to get FCC compliant, and our radio system is just really bad, and we rely on that daily. And so that's why we had decided to do that as quickly as possible. We're actually using a loaner piece of equipment right now just to keep our radios operational, and that's citywide, police, fire, utilities, our service everyone is using the same frequency, and we're having trouble even communicating right now. So those are the two things.
I
Yeah.
agree with that 100%, and I thank you.
I just wanted you to know what they
We need
were.
to see those. We need all these little things, for water payments, but that all adds up. Those are the
Right.
things we can live without. We have to make do. But what you're talking about, I support you, you know that.
Oh, I know, and in fairness, since you brought it up, I just wanted to make sure that it was put out there why, these two things are on the agenda tonight, so. Thank you.
One other thing. One other thing too, and some of you might not know this, but at the end of each month, the fourth Tuesday of every month, we have a workshop. And this is where we spend all the time talking about all the issues we have with our budget, things that we have to comply with the EPA, with the FCC, all the different things that come up with the different departments and so forth. We talk about everything in complete detail. There are times that we're here till 10:15, 10:30 at night. We start our meetings at 7:30. So we're here for a lot of times on workshop nights, going over the fine details of all this stuff. I invite you all to please come and sit and listen to what we talk about, because that is the meat and potatoes of everything that we have to do and the hard, tough decisions that we have to make. Because we've had to make so many tough decisions in just the 3 years that I've been on council with the new water meters and so forth, because that was put off. Things were put off. They weren't dealt with the way they should have been dealt with. And now we're having to kind of clean up a lot of the pieces, like Alice said. So please come to those meetings and listen to what we talk about. Y'all are able to come to those meetings at any time. I think it would explain a lot of things to a lot of folks if they would come and listen to that. And they start every
Yes, ma'am.
every fourth Tuesday at 7:30. And I'll tell you, out of the 3 years I've been on council, there's one man back there that's sitting behind you, Bob, that comes to every single workshop. Other than that, Bob is about it. So please come, because you will learn a lot more about what we're having to do in this village to keep things going and things we have to comply with. Because if we don't, then we could be fined or we could be held accountable for things as well. So please think about that.
And I would just like to iterate on that. One of the biggest things that's coming up that we've been talking about for probably 18 months or so is the I&I study. In regards to the sewer system, there's a lot of issues in regards to our sewers. It's a really complicated. I wish Tim was here because he's the best one to talk about it. But there's going to be a lot of hard decisions over the next 5 years that it's not because we want to make those decisions or because we're putting them on the forefront. It's because the Ohio EPA is mandating that we address these issues. So we have to abide by what they're pushing down on us, or we're looking at possible fines or worse. So we have to deal with those items that are coming down from above. And that's one of the biggest ones that I think we're going to be tackling over the next few years.
In a nutshell, those problems are with an older system that has leakage into the sewer system. Not that we're losing things out of the sewer system, but on a heavy rain, excess water comes into the system and will treat, instead of 1 million gallons of water at the sewer plant, correct me if I'm wrong, about, okay.
3 million.
3 million gallons of water on a rainy day. The EPA does not like that.
And our equipment just doesn't like that. I mean, you're putting wear and tear on equipment that wasn't designed to handle that and do all that on a regular basis, and it's been doing it on a regular basis for years.
And I will let you know one other thing. We are constantly, and Matt is, I mean, he goes above and beyond looking at what we can do in this village for our water issue and our water problem, because we purchase our water through the city of Troy. And we have, probably 5 or 6 years left on our contract with Troy. So, I mean, that was a 20-year contract that was done many years ago. So we are constantly looking at ways down the road that we can change things for this community, but it just takes time.
And
we can't do it overnight.
Troy has continued over the last few years to increase their rates, even though they went on record saying that they did not need to raise their rates. They did it because they had told their people that they were going to raise them. They realized that they didn't need to, and they decided, well, we're not going to change our mind because we already said we were going to raise them. So we were stuck with that.
We will have another section at the end here for other comments if you have questions about the tax credit that was removed. I will say again, we actually like seeing people in the audience, and I know there was kind of a smile with that when I said it the first time. It is nice to have feedback from the community. It's
very
it's
important.
much more welcoming to us to hear it here, where we can share information with you on why we've come to the decisions that we have, rather than have things churn through the rumor mill where things get misstated with inappropriate numbers. I'll go ahead and throw one out there. We do not maintain a $250,000 fleet of Hemi Charger police cruisers. We own 4 police cruisers. Each one is purchased at a price of approximately $33,000, and that's fully equipped, ready to use for the police department. They get swapped out. There's a 5-year rotation. A new one is bought every year. 5th year, there is not a new cruiser purchased. That keeps dependable vehicles in that fleet. It's a very reasonable price. In fact,
And what do we do with the
probably
old
is-
police cruisers?
the old police,
We send those to the streets department and other departments
well,
to
yes,
use.
there's several guys that
So-
drive those still.
They get more use out of them.
So we do, before we go on with the legislation for this evening, we really do like having faces in the audience so that we can hear your concerns and discuss with you. And Scott is right. It's the 4th Tuesday of the month that more of this discussion goes on. If it looks like we vote on these things without having discussion or debate over what we should do, most of the time this is at the end of several months of discussing how to handle certain situations. It's just that when it gets to this point of the meeting, those discussions have happened. We're in unison on, or in agreement, I should say, on the direction that we're going. And this is just the formality of voting on the second Tuesday meeting. We'll go ahead with our legislation for this evening, and again, we'll open the floor back up to more questions at the end of the meeting. Our first one is CM-15-06. Mrs. Brush?
It's a resolution authorizing the purchase of a vehicle for the West Milton Public Works Division. Whereas the municipality's 2015 operating budget includes $45,000 for the purchase of a new truck for the current calendar year, and funds have been duly appropriated. And whereas the administration has reviewed and compared the State of Ohio Cooperative Purchasing Program truck with the desired truck and found it advantageous to not purchase through the program this year. And whereas the administration has followed Codified Ordinance 33.18 purchasing and received 3 different bids. And whereas it is the opinion of the manager that this action is in the best interest of the municipality. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Municipality of West Milton, Ohio, that Section 1, the municipal manager is hereby authorized and directed to purchase a model year 2015 Ford F-350 cab and chassis in the amount of $34,394.70 from Middletown Ford of Middletown, Ohio, and to execute all documents and agreements necessary to complete the transaction of this purchase. Section 2, this resolution will take effect immediately upon passage.
Is there a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved.
Discussion, comments?
Just want to compliment Ben. We are going with the Ford this year. We've had better experience with Ford. I let Ben actually talk about it more. The state cooperative purchase this year was Chevy. We've not had good experience with that. And actually, Ben knows the actual dollar amount, but this Ford chassis is actually less than what the Chevy bid was for the state of Ohio this year by
About
$2,000.
Yeah.
By $2,000.
And we are repurposing the bed off of a truck. We're actually saving the bed off of a truck and putting it on the new truck. We're just gonna have it, taken care of as far as any rust and stuff. So we're repurposing a bed.
So we'll take the bed that we're currently using, sandblast it, get it ready, prepared, make it Milton red, and put it back onto the new chassis.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Tinnerman?
Yes. Before we move on to the next one, I'll just use that as a point to, not only that there was a budgeted amount and they came in well under that budgeted amount, the employees of the village really do treat your tax dollars like it's coming out of their own pocket. They go above and beyond like this. They don't order it in with the bed all ready to go. They strip down the old one, put it on the next one. They really do look for every opportunity they can to save a dollar and do their best to keep the budget tight. Next resolution is CM 15-07.
It's a resolution authorizing the purchase of narrowband radios for all West Milton divisions. Whereas the municipality's 2015 operating budget includes $18,000 for replacing the radio system to a narrowband frequency for the current calendar year, and funds have been duly appropriated. And whereas council by resolution CM-96-21 authorized the municipality's participation in the state of Ohio's cooperative purchasing program. And whereas WS Electronics LLC of Xenia, Ohio is the local state bid dealer for 2015. Whereas it is further the opinion of the manager that this action by the council is in the best interest of the municipality and in compliance with the administrative code and resolution CM-96-21. Now therefore be it resolved by the council of the municipality of West Milton, Ohio, that section 1, the municipal manager is hereby authorized and directed to purchase narrowband radios to be in compliance with federal regulations in the amount of $14,685.94, and to execute all documents and agreements necessary to complete the transaction of this purchase. Section 2, this resolution shall take full force and effect immediately upon its passage.
Thank you. Is there a motion to accept this ordinance,
So moved.
Second.
resolution? Sorry. Roll call, please.
Cobb?
Yes.
Francis?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Mayor Tinnerman?
Yes. Move on to our next one of CM 15-08.
It's an ordinance amending section 51.26 sewer charges and delinquent accounts and section 52.120 water charges and delinquent accounts of the Code of Ordinances for the municipality of West Milton, Ohio. Whereas council has determined that it is necessary to revise sections 51.26B and 52.120B of the West Milton Code of Ordinances relating to the payment of delinquent sewer and water accounts. And whereas a revision is necessary in order to clarify the payment required on delinquent sewer and water accounts. Now therefore be it ordained by the council for the village of West Milton, Ohio as follows. Section 1, the language contained in section 51.26B of the West Milton Code of Ordinances is hereby revised as follows. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please.
The whole thing? Okay.
Yes. Just, I would prefer, since we do have,
That's
to
fine.
make sure they understand that it's not changing rates.
Okay, section B now reads, customers whose bill has not been paid by the end of the month in which the bill was sent shall be issued a delinquent notice. If payment has not been received prior to the shut-off date listed on the bill, a $30 service fee shall be levied on the account, and customers shall be required to pay the entire account balance to avoid shut-off. The customer has the right to appeal the disconnection under the provisions of section 52.121. If no appeal has been filed in accordance with section 52.121 and payment has not been received by the shut-off date, service shall be disconnected without further notice, and an off and on fee of $20 for service within the municipality and $25 for service outside the municipality shall be charged. Section 2, the language contained in section 52.120B of the West Milton Code of Ordinances is hereby revised as follows. Customers whose bill has not been paid by the end of the month in which the bill was sent shall be issued a delinquent notice. If payment has not been received prior to the shut-off date listed on the bill, a $30 service fee shall be levied on the account, and customers shall be required to pay the entire account balance to avoid shut-off. The customer has the right to appeal the disconnection under the provisions of Section 52.121. And if no appeal has been filed in accordance with Section 52.121 and payment has not been received by the shut-off date, service shall be disconnected without further notice, and an off-and-on fee of $20 for service within the municipality and $25 for service outside the municipality shall be charged. Section 3, this ordinance shall become effective from and after the earliest date permitted by law.
That would just be the first reading, correct?
Yes.
And to clarify, just the part that was added in both of those sections is, and customers shall be required to pay the entire account balance to avoid shut-off. That was what, out of all of that, was added to those two sections.
To be fair, if you're wondering why we have a couple dozen customers who play the game, we don't just get up on shut-off day and are able to shut you off. There's a procedure to go through. It takes time. So by the time that gentleman, most of you know Jim or Tim, go out to shut somebody off, the way the ordinance used to read, if they came in and paid the minimum amount due and not the full amount, then we could not shut them off. So they just kept stringing it on, and they did it month after month after month after month. So then you have Joetta or Ann telling Tim or Jim while they're in there at the yard shutting it off, don't shut it off because they've paid the minimum amount. Now we're just asking them or requiring them to pay the full amount when it gets to the day of shut off. That's the change.
And that was just first reading. Being an ordinance, they are read for 2 months, and it's voted on at the second month. Move on to CM-15-09.
It's an ordinance amending Section 52.116 Water Rates and Municipality of the Code of Ordinances for the Municipality of West Milton, Ohio. Whereas it has been determined that Section 52.116D is no longer feasible due to the increased cost of providing water to the Village of West Milton. And whereas it is the desire of council to repeal the language currently existing in this code section in order to maintain the fiscal stability of the water fund. Now therefore be it ordained by the council for the Village of West Milton, Ohio as follows. Section 1. The language contained in the existing section of the West Milton Code of Ordinances, 52.116D, is hereby repealed, and the remaining subsections are renumbered and modified to reflect this change as follows. There's Section D, D1, D2, D3, and D4, which are being repealed, and the following Section E is being changed to read D, and the current language remains in that section. Section 3, this ordinance shall become effective from and after January 1st, 2016.
That again is a first reading only, since it is an ordinance. And I'll point out what she mentioned at the end. This is the ordinance to remove the credit for disability customers. And you might notice that it won't take effect until January 1st of next year to try to give them some time to be prepared for that. And our last one is CM-15-10.
An ordinance amending Section 51.22 sewer rate schedule in municipality of the Code of Ordinances for the Municipality of West Milton, Ohio. Whereas it has been determined that Section 51.22C is no longer feasible due to the increased cost of providing sewer services to the Village of West Milton. And whereas it has also been determined that it is necessary to increase sewer rates for service to non-residents in order to maintain the fiscal stability of the sewer fund. Now therefore be it ordained by the council for the Village of West Milton, Ohio as follows. Section 1, the language contained in the existing section of the West Milton Code of Ordinances, 51.22C, is hereby repealed and replaced as follows. As they're currently read, Section C, C1, C2, C3 and C4 would be repealed. C would now read, the sewer rates to be charged for sewer service furnished by the Village of West Milton to all customers whose principal dwelling, place of business, or work is situated outside the municipal limits shall be fixed at 130% of the rates charged to consumers within the corporate limits of West Milton, with the exception that the sewer rates to be charged for the sewer service furnished by West Milton to Memorial Holiness Camp or its assigns or successors shall be fixed at a rate of 115% of the rates charged for in-town users until such time the area is annexed into the municipality. Section 3, this ordinance, actually, it's Section 2. This ordinance shall become effective from and after January 1st, 2016.
Let's see that.
Thank you. Yeah. Move on to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, council, and guests. Council, you'll recall at the last meeting, I had mentioned that we were looking for those who would like to serve on an open seat on the park board, and actually technically 2 open seats on the Board of Adjustments. Chris Horn was here that night, Reverend Horn, and after the meeting, he came up and he is volunteered to serve on the Board of Adjustments. Mr. Horn lives at 23 North Williams, and this would be the replacement of one of the 2 empty seats. It does require council action.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to appoint Chris Horn to the Board of Adjustments.
Second. Roll call, please.
Cobb? Yes. Francis?
Yes.
Vogel?
Yes.
Dorman?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
And Mayor Tinnerman?
Yes.
And finally, from time to time during my manager's report, I've always taken a few minutes to recognize it always seems to be Ben or Tim's men for work that they've done utilizing their talents. As council has already indicated, or you'll recall last year when the clarifier broke down and we needed to buy a new motor at the wastewater treatment plant. The men have the talent to be able to install that themselves, which actually saved the village over $40,000 in installation costs. But the one department that it seemed never to talk about, because probably, except for the simple fact of welcoming and swearing in a new member, is the police department. We probably do that because they don't always deal with the most pleasant of issues. But I really wanted to let you know that the police department, although we've been making cuts and we're a smaller department now in manpower, they're extremely busy. It's only 5 weeks into the year and we have responded to over 500 calls. We're averaging over 100 calls a week with essentially 7 men. And now, of course, many of these calls are disturbing the peace, but it's been our recognition that it's become a little bit more than that. Like I said, it's typically disturbing the peace or suspicious activity, but more and more we're seeing domestic violence cases and theft, shoplifting, and one thing that is really bothersome is, and it seems to be someone coming into City Hall at least once a week, if not once a day, reporting identity theft. So I really urge everyone to know what you're doing with your identity and try to protect yourself as best as possible. It's very disturbing to see that. Also, unfortunately, we're also starting to see some prostitution and more drug-related cases. You may have heard on the news or read in the paper of the heroin epidemic, which seems to be sweeping our country. It is here in West Milton, too. I suppose what bothers me the most is one of our latest drug cases which resulted in an arrest included fentanyl. Mr. Dorman's probably knows of fentanyl, or Mr. Miller.
It's a synthetic opiate that they used to often cut heroin with. It is way more potent than heroin, and it leads to the majority of overdoses we see in not larger communities all over Dayton. Usually results in death.
This is some of the first times that we're seeing fentanyl now instead of just pure heroin in our town. And believe it or not, in our investigations, there's actual blogs about heroin and other drugs. They say, as Councilman Dorman just said, fentanyl is an incredible high and is much more potent than heroin. The problem lies with its duration of action. Fentanyl does not last long at all. As such, when one develops a tolerance to it, they need to redose constantly to avoid severe withdrawals. The shorter the action, the more intense the withdrawals are, and they don't last as long. Several other lines in this blog that have certain words that I shouldn't or cannot read here on council, but one of the most bothersome ones at the very end is, as far as price, heroin is ridiculously cheap, especially considering the fact that you'll need to redose on fentanyl every 2 hours to stay well, unlike heroin that lasts up to 6 hours. I guess I want to reassure council and our citizens that even though our department is smaller, we're well aware of this problem, and our offices are very dedicated and committed to driving this culture away from our town. I'm not naive to say that they will drive it out, but we will work very hard to drive it underground and make things like drugs, theft, and prostitution something that people simply do not want to do here in West Milton. So I'd like to thank Chief Bussey and the dedication that we do have of our small department. And that's all I have for this evening, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any old business to discuss? New business? We'll open the floor back up to citizens for comments of any nature. Go ahead. You can come to, if you would just state your name and at least the street you live on.
Levi Knight, Beach Nut. Ordinance that you guys passed in October on the RV trailer ordinance. I want to know how to reverse that. What actions do I have to take to get that reversed?
If you would like to see, I guess I have to think of how you say that. What's that?
Do I have to
Well,
petition?
I would just say
impose?
in general to either see an ordinance brought in or removed. It would just start with simple conversation with council. And then the legal end of it, Lene
If
could
it was a
answer
unanimous vote by council.
what would be the
what would I
likelihood of that.
say to make you guys change your mind?
I would say that that vote came after months of discussion with actually it was the last time we had a filled audience with several people who own campers that I would like to say had a big part in how we came about that decision, the lengths, the setbacks, all the different language in that, to try and come up with a balance for the people who own and enjoy their RVs.
Yeah, I was the piece of crap camper that was on Beach Nut
Okay,
by Mr. Shade.
okay.
I believe the way you guys had explained it, you were wanting to fix people that had campers that weren't doing anything with them. They've been sitting there for years.
That was one of the concerns, yes.
Right. That was your guys' biggest concern from what I heard in the video. I watched the video of you guys. I drove around town myself, as all of you said you did, and I maybe seen 5 or 6 that looked like there were weeds growing up around them, and they looked horrible. And my belief, if none of those people have complained, none of their neighbors have complained, I don't see a problem with it. Mine complained, and it sat there 2 months. It's not something that sat there and weeds were growing up around it. they never come over and talk to me and ask me if it was gonna stay there. It could have all been handled by a simple conversation. And I think that's how anybody's situation like that could be handled, rather than make everyone else suffer. Like guys that have their livelihood in landscaping, that have their mowers and everything in their side yard and the grass, that now have to move them and can't have them out on the street because they don't have room for it out on their street. I know you guys thought about it and tried to do your best, but I don't think it was the best decision.
What do you recommend, sir?
Neighbors talking to each other if they have a problem. It would have worked if they'd come over and talked to me.
It might work with you, but I go back a long ways on this RV issue.
And-
It doesn't work all.
And I'll say, he brought that issue up after months of the planning board, was it?
It started with the
The
plan.
planning board had already talked about it before he brought that concern in.
Except for 2 months.
Well, that's what I'm saying, the two discussions in regards to the RV ordinance happened for 3 or 4 months with the planning board before we spent 4 months at workshops talking about it for 2 to 3 hours each workshop.
And I will tell you, this was not designed around your RV. It
I know.
was,
The
tried-
video that I watched, there were 2, me and another person. They mentioned, you guys had said there were 2 incidences that were on hand. I was one, there was another. There's whole town was one. Why let 2 people ruin it for everybody?
one thing that we were trying to do while writing this was not write an ordinance to handle 2 situations, but to handle something to prevent future problems as well. And I don't want to throw you into the problems part of that. And I happen to agree with you, communication between neighbors usually resolves things the best way.
Yeah, I think it makes a bigger problem not coming over and talking to me.
This really was and is part of a larger scope that we've been trying to address really for the last year with council, and that we're not done with. I was going to invite and announce tonight with the overall cleanup, if for a lack of better words, of town. Addressing things, the camper just happened to be the first issue that we looked at. We have talked about junk motor vehicles that sit in driveways and on streets and addressing that issue. There's some properties that have multiple junk vehicles on their property. So that's really the second one that we're looking to address. And then outside exterior maintenance of properties, mainly of the house. But so that the overall appearance and the curb appeal of town, we're not looking to change things to where it's difficult to live here, but most people work pretty hard to maintain a nice property. And we want to have ordinances in place that allow us to encourage the neighbor who doesn't want to keep their property maintained as well, and to try to set some type of standard, what I would even consider a minimum standard in town.
Now, me having the camper on the side of my house, not on permanent structure, what makes that not a maintained residence?
I wasn't trying to throw your residence in with the camper.
Well,
I was just speaking of the camper was the first of many things that we're trying to look at to bring curb appeal back.
I'm asking why is it a problem for me to have it on the side of my house?
Through many, and I don't want to control all the conversation if you want to hear from others as well. A lot of that conversation came around, okay, what is too large of a camper to park beside someone's house? How close to your neighbor's property line is acceptable to park a camper on your property, next to their property? we stayed away from issues like, you can't write an ordinance based on appearance of things, but rather how well they're being maintained. Part of the hard surface in there, the thought behind that was that someone who is using and enjoying their camper and taking care of it, what we didn't want to see is people parking them in the grass, weeds growing up, ruts in the yard, sitting in a mud hole. And that someone who's using their camper and enjoying it would probably be okay with putting in some type of a hard surface for that to sit on.
But if they don't have the money to put that hard surface in, what if they put their money into that camper that's sitting on the side of their house?
And I do understand that. We tried to balance both of those things out. I myself have an older camper that most neighbors probably would not want sitting beside my house. I don't have it sitting beside my house. I chose not to store it in that location. I will say I'm fortunate to have an alternate location to store it in. There is a facility in town to store campers that you do have to pay a storage fee, but it may be less expensive than maintaining or installing some type of a hard surface.
But that's still a fee that's a burden to me when it's my property.
One of the families that came in to represent both sides of the issue brought up what I'm looking into for mine, and that is storage at the Miami County Fairgrounds. It's only like $50 a year, they mentioned.
And I have to go to the Miami County Fairgrounds. If I want to go camping,
Well,
then I
that's,
have to go to Miami County Fairgrounds, where I can hook it up in my yard and go.
When you choose to.
Right.
What we,
I am a heavy outdoorsman. I am always out. I use my stuff all the time.
what we try to balance is the people who want to be able to have that ability, and also people who do a lot of work to maintain their property. And again,
Why make it my cost?
Then there's also
Something
regulations.
that's a burden to them. If they have a problem and they don't want to see something, why couldn't they put a privacy fence up so they can see their property that they paid for? That is my property that I paid for. It may be an eyesore to them, but it's not to me.
kind of to reaffirm what he's saying, we're not trying to legislate beauty of a camper. I mean, what one person calls old is another person will call vintage. But just the basic standard of maintenance and storage within the community as it affects all of us. Was kind of the ins and outs of where we came to that. We debated on what's considered a hard surface, what is considered, well-maintained. We looked at things like making sure it was roadworthy, that it had tags, things like that. I don't think anybody was trying to, keep campers out of West Milton.
Right.
Just put some basic construct to how they're stored and the expectations within the community.
And we also looked at other communities in reference to West Milton that are very similar to our communities. But every community has an RV ordinance that is similar to ours, where some of them are even more stringent than what West Milton is. So no matter where you live, if it's Vandalia, if it's Tip, if it's Union, if it's Inglewood, there's an RV ordinance.
What
And
about Little Falls or Pleasant Hill?
I don't know about those specific areas. We did not,
You
we didn't
mentioned
research
all
them.
Bigger cities than us.
We looked at Covington, we looked at Union, which is similar to West Milton. We looked at Tip, we looked at Troy.
I would encourage you, and you can now, you can come back to a workshop meeting, you can talk to any of us after the meeting, that if, I'm open for hearing any other suggestions that you have to make it workable for everyone.
Right.
I pride this council, and I'm very proud of how this council is willing to listen. I think that's one of the strongest things this council does, is it does have an open ear. And if there's something that you see that makes it better across the board, then I guess to answer that original question, how can that be changed? If you can show a way that works better, we're willing to listen to that.
One of the things we had several other families in town came up and said, they took the way that the ordinance was written, and we looked at it and said, okay, if you had to change it, how would you change it? Because there were 7 different ideas, plus there was different ideas from the planning board. We all knew that eventually we'd have to come up with one way, so then they even came up with some ideas. Some of them were, one person said, easy, just get rid of all of them. That obviously wasn't going to happen. So I would go to you and say, I'll be more than happy to get you copies of the previous one, the way it is now, and sit down and look at them with you. Because it's as easy as opening it up and asking.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for having the comments.
I'm going to address that RV issue. You guys brought this one up, but we used to have in Bull a 34-footer triple slide, and we always had to get 72-hour permission to park it in front of our house before we left to load it, and when we came home to unload it. There was a big issue of RVs way back in 87, 88, and 89. They even tried an ordinance, tried to make people with new RVs, brand new RVs, move them out of town because they didn't want them parked in town. So this is way before you guys' time and back when we were towing. So it's not a new issue. It's something that's being addressed again. But back then, they didn't even want new RVs. We had a brand new 40,000 RV that wasn't acceptable. So it's not a new issue. It's something that has come up and up and up and up again.
Any other comments this evening?
I have a comment on the, my name is John Maglow, I live at 25 Lee Circle. A lot of this is going to be redundant, so a lot of people brought this stuff up so far tonight. But it's about the tax change, the credit that's been taken away. I graduated from Northmont, and I bought my first home in West Milton. And what drew me here was the low cost of living. And a few months after I moved into town, my parents sold their home in Inglewood, and they now live in West Milton, and they chose to do that because of the low cost of living. And I've even met people I've gone to high school with who now live here because of the cost of living. So, going back, I bought my first home in 2002, what are we doing for out-of-towners to buy real estate in this area? There's no industry here. We spoke tonight about the highest water rates of any nearby town. You had said $40-some or $120 a month. We have a contract with Waste Management that, whether you use it or not, you have to pay for it. A lot of people are upset with that. And then, to have this tax credit voted on and taken away during the holidays, and I understand that this was spoke about before, because you guys are talking about the ordinance, you guys have meetings and stuff. I should be at work right now. Not everybody can make the meetings. So, I feel like that's something that should have been made, notice to the public, hey, this is what we're going to be voting on. This affects a lot of people. But what really has upset me about all this is that, as of today, unless you follow the Facebook page of West Milton, nobody knows about this. And people are already hundreds of dollars, working families, in debt to the city. And I understand, I've read this letter, I understand it's going to be mailed out, but, families should have got this no later than January 1st, when it started affecting everybody's pocket. I don't know, I'm not happy with that. The letter talks about wage freezes and employees paying more for health insurance. Chris and I are on a 5-year wage freeze right now. And our foremen have a $14,000 deductible on their health insurance. So, we're with you, you know, I mean, by far, if not more. You know, I don't know if we took into account, you know, I have a neighbor who works in the city of Dayton. They have a high city income tax if you work there. If you add that up with this full 1.5% and their school tax, they're now paying close to 6% just in local taxes. And that's not considering anything else. I feel that if there had been a 1% increase in income taxes that affected everybody in the community, you know, on income tax, you know, I think that would have spurred, that would have been a ballot issue. Then everybody would have been able to tell you guys, you know, if that passed, then the passed. If it didn't, it didn't. This is what the community wants, you know. I don't know. I feel that it's really going to hurt us too on future levies and home values. I don't think it's going to draw people to buy our homes.
Thank you. I didn't write down a lot of your comments, but one that I did notice, and I agree, the letter is going out late. To be honest, we kept working on how to take, and Mr. Klein's comment of this, I think, is most accurate, how to take a complex issue and turn it into a 2-page written that gave enough detail to make it understandable, but not overload it with so much information that it was not understandable. And then also to try to include some type of graphs for people who are more visual, which fits me personally. That's my type. Anyway, so that did take longer than what we anticipated to come up with what we thought was right to explain why it was happening. We did start in August, and I remember in the August I believe it was August, I know it was in the summer, that I began saying at the end of our meetings that budget issues and budget discussion would be happening over the next several months, and that anyone who was interested in these type of topics, had any information on them, had experience with them, ideas, suggestions, please come to the meetings, to the workshops, to the council meetings. Let us know what you think. If we're missing something, show us. Again, it kind of comes back to the openness. The letter going out late doesn't exactly go with that, but we have been talking about this really for the last 6 months. In full, this has been an idea that has been discussed for about the last 1.5 years as far as removing the tax credit. We waited on that as long as possible, trying to see if the state was going to change some of their budgetary ways that they were doing things. In short, some of the ways that they have balanced the state budget have been on the backs of local governments and school districts. Not that we have anything to do with each other, school districts and local government, but those are two big places that saw cuts from the state budget. Our revenues have gone down, and to your earlier comment, you know, some people have been getting raises or on pay freezes. The village has actually been on a pay reduction over the last several years. For what you see in the letter is various different reasons. Money that come from local government funds from the state, interest money that's received on the money that is in the nest egg or general fund, for lack of better terms. Those things, and even the estate tax, which I guess someday would save your family some money. It doesn't really do anything for you at this current time. That actually had an impact on our bottom line. And with our increases in spending, and not just spending on voluntary level, but things like healthcare, different things that we don't have control over, along with income going down, not just staying the same, or not having a pay increase and our health care going up, there was actually a pay decrease. So I know that's kind of a general answer to where some of that difference has come from. But things have changed pretty dramatically, really, in the last 4 to 5 years, budgetary-wise. I believe we've cut, is it about 500,000 out of the budget over the last 2 years? So, again, I give more credit to the individual departments of the village than I would ever take for myself or for anyone on council, although council themselves does go over the budget and does look at these things. It's really the different department heads that they are the ones who really do an amazing job getting everything done with the limited funds that they have. The street department, for instance, when we passed the last street levy, and that was passed, what was the comparison for 5 years prior? That there were 5 less employees
Yes.
than there were, or not 5 years prior, to when the first street levy was passed, which was
Right.
20 years ago?
20 years.
That there's actually 5 fewer employees today than there were then. That they use less salt on the roads today than they did then, even though there's more miles within the jurisdiction of the municipality. Again, all that credit goes to the employees here. That's these guys figuring out how to use a brine system that saves salt, that saves manpower.
The 0.5% renewal that's coming up in May,
Yes,
and it's going to also be voted to be permanent, or that's going to be on the ballot.
yes.
If that passes, will that be able to be adjusted up or down without the public's?
No. Go ahead.
Basically, the way that the taxes go is we have two, and basically there's 2 income taxes currently. There's a 1% income tax, and then there's a 0.5% income tax. The way that the 0.5% income tax works is it's fully funding, it's only allowed to be used for police and fire. The 1% pretty well goes to the general fund. According to if I get too technical or too different terms, please tell me, because I'm an accountant and that's just what spurs out of me. Yeah, she's laughing at me again. The Ohio Revised Code allows municipalities to do a credit for income taxes. The way that the 0.5% was written and passed and voted on was there would be allowed to be no match. So that's why you had a 1% match based off of a total of a 1.5%. That also allows the municipality to change that credit or to take away that credit. It does not increase the 1.5% total that's out there. It's just what can get credit against. And it's actually surprised me over the last few years. A lot of people are under the impression that when you're getting that credit because you're paying it to another city like Dayton, that city is going to be paying us that 1%, that we're going to go and claim it from them, and we don't. So we don't have that. And then, so making that 0.5% permanent in May, all it does is make the entire 1.5% permanent. It makes it to where in 5 years from now, the police and fire department do not have to go back out there, and then 5 years after that, it doesn't. And then also for budgetary reasons, it allows us to do 5-year forecasting, knowing that that's there. Anything beyond that 1.5% would have to go in front of the voters. So out of all of that, the important thing, if any more were to come, that'd have to go to the voters. And the voters would have to approve that. One thing I found very interesting when we were doing all of this, looking back at previous ordinances, was when the 0.5% ordinance was originally passed, it was expected to bring in $750,000 in the first 5 years. It doesn't bring in 1/10 of that in 1 year. So there's no way it can make it in 5. So the expectations of what it was going to do 20 years ago are nowhere near what it's producing. The 1.5% doesn't make that in a year or two. So then coupled with what the mayor was saying, over the last 2 years, the state balanced their budget. There's 3 main ways that the state balanced their budget. They reduced income to municipalities that were coming from the state. They reduced the income to school districts, and they raised sales tax 0.25%. I'm not sure if anyone's looked at the new budget proposal, but ours, the money that's going to be coming to the cities is even lower than it was before. School districts is lower. They want to do a small business deduction for businesses to make it permanent, and they want to do a 0.5% sales tax increase.
What's the expected income from this 1%?
Matt, do you have those numbers?
It's about $400,000. Not quite, 383,000.
In 1 year.
I would like to add with that, and that's a good question. This does not put us in living large on the hill by any means. This balances our budget, and with what we see as expected future cuts in funding as well, I'm not forecasting other, as he just said, any other increases would have to go before the voters. But I don't want people to think that just because this is being done, that the city coffers will grow larger and larger. It really is going to put us at a level game, not at a profit game. If we are looking at other issues serious issues that are going to have to be addressed as well. We mentioned the I&I issue before. It's not a cheap fix, not any of them. Our water towers have issues that need repainted. If you know anybody who paints water towers, send them our way. That's not a cheap type of thing either. There are other large expenses that we're trying to figure out how to accomplish those as well within the budget that we're even looking at currently. So I'm just trying to, I want to throw that out in front in the beginning also, that this doesn't make everything easy. It doesn't mean every street's going to get repaved or things of that nature.
And also, what it does is we're also looking at, for like the I&I, different ways of where to get funding, whether it's through grants or low-interest loans that we don't have to try and come up, because the I&I is millions of dollars. That, obviously, you can look at the numbers. It's not here. But the state's mandating that we do things that cost this much. So we're losing funding from the state, but yet they're requiring us to do more. It's the whole more with less issue. And then, as you said, it balances the budget. So we're going to have to find more ways to cut costs internally to do that, because it's I'll speak for myself, it's not in my intention on the budget committee to propose any more increases. And I'm sure everyone on here is the same way. So we're going to continue to find ways to continue to cut and to make it to go that way.
Just a general note for everyone, and I'll go ahead and I'll say it, state representatives or elected officials on up the ladder that control the budgetary money that comes to us. Send them an email, give them a call, and tell them that you don't appreciate local funding being cut, that you feel it in your pocketbook. It's often said that local government is the government that you interact with the most. It's the one that paves your roads, supplies water to you. It's the one that makes the other water go away. It's the one that provides parks and the basic services that you are in contact with on a daily basis. So sometimes that money that goes away to the state or the federal level that used to get returned to us to provide those direct services to the community, put some pressure on those as well. Please use this same enthusiasm that you have tonight to make that phone call. And I'd also like to point out, it's not, just one more.
No.
I don't think that Milton is in a position where they are overspending on things. We don't have public assistance programs. We don't have different type of line items within the budget that can easily be cut. You know, we don't have offerings from a recreation department, a parks district per se, that we can say, okay, this was some type of activity that we used to offer to the community that now we can save $50,000 here. We're pretty close to the bone the way things are right now. And I think maintaining that minimum level, that's the reason that we looked at removing the credit instead of removing other things, such as police officers. In several conversations that I've had with people, that was one of the last things that they wanted to see, was the fear of removing police officers and what that may allow to move into town or start to happen in town or go unchecked.
And we're already operating on one less police officer because we had to make that decision. So normally we would have 8 and we only have 7. So we decided not to hire another police officer position, so.
And one thing I'll also add is this isn't going to be uncommon to West Milton, seeing this credit reduction. More cities across the state are going to be doing this type of action. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was one city a year ago that took this action, and actually, it was December that they made this action, and they made it retroactive to January of that year. So they didn't make it January the following year, they went back 12 months and made it retroactive. Somebody once, I believe it was down in Dayton, don't quote me as to where it was, even went on to one of the blogs and saying, the way to cut the state's budget is to punish the cities on to the money that they go. So we understand it was a very hard decision. We had a lot of conversations as to, do we do a 0.5% credit now? Do we do another 0.5% later? This is putting a Band-Aid on the bleed of the budget in regards to that, because that was the only way to do that at this time. But there was a lot of other discussions. I mean, one we even had was, do we put out there to where we increase the taxes and keep a credit? Then you're increasing there would be no match on that new tax, just a new tax. So a lot of discussions took place. I just want to say it wasn't taken lightly.
Well, one thing you want to make sure, and because there's already comments, this tax levy that's coming on, making it permanent, does not raise anyone's taxes.
Correct.
And it won't raise anyone's taxes in the future. And we really need to get that information out there now. Don't wait till 3 weeks before the election, because there's already people saying, well, it's going to raise our taxes. It will not raise our taxes, because, folks, I'll just let you know something. If it would have, I would have led the fight against it, and I'm willing now to lead the fight for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone should draft Mrs. Martin to actually start talking to the state legislators, because that's,
So I paid my way to Columbus.
You know,
but
I'll bribe you.
Mr. The mayor is absolutely right. And it's not that we've not done anything. We've had several discussions with our state representatives and state senators. I think what's most disappointing to me is in those conversations, there's a disbelief that it actually has an effect on us. And it has a huge effect on us, but I know to the city of Troy and city of Tip, it's into the millions of the effect. When you accumulate over years of your taxes were supposed to go to the state and then return back to you, and 4 years ago or more, they decided not to do that anymore, and it has had a serious effect. I don't want to get on a political soapbox, but they reduced or they actually eliminated at least 3 other taxes, completely eliminated 3 other taxes. One of them had a big impact on us. 2 of them did not, because, as you said, we're more of a residential community. We don't have large businesses here. But I think what's disappointing to me is those large businesses don't seem to be hiring more or giving raises to their employees. I think that was the theory behind it. Let's get rid of those taxes so employees would benefit. If you benefited from a raise, then obviously our income tax would be sufficient.
I'll point it, well, go ahead.
You said that we had a contract with Troy.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
For the water?
For the water. Was there wording in the contract that they could go and up the rates at any given time?
Yes.
Yes, and that water,
And did you sign that contract?
that was signed about 13 to 15 years ago.
I will defend how it is written is that our rates cannot be raised at any higher rate than what they raise
The
their
residents in
rate
Troy.
on their own residents.
Right.
So that was good protection that council had put in place as well.
You educated me on the reimbursement from one city to the next.
That
What
was,
was that?
No.
Oh, somebody said water bills. I know my wife was just upset the other day because we received the water bill 5 days prior to the due date. And at $120, that's not nice. So I'd like to find out what's going on there. Secondly,
As far as I know, that hasn't been a common occurrence with us. As far as I remember, the last couple months, mine's been there on the first of the
I'm just
month.
saying what she just
Yeah.
said.
No, I know. It might be an individual.
and I would welcome you to
Something.
let Manager Klein know. And can we get your name for the record for?
Chris Jones, 11 Dewar Drive.
Thank you, sir. I'd get with Manager Klein, let him know that, so that way he can look into that issue. Because I know if I came home and my wife saw that, $140 water bill every month, I'm sure I'd get this, yeah. Well, no, for mine, I'd get the same look. So,
The other one is, this letter. Is it going, I mean, to me, that's a priority. I mean, I'm already $400 in debt to the city. So, and that's not including the $120 water. So,
I was told today that it's being printed and mailed. That's what I was told today. We don't have the ability to print and mail it out, but the company that's doing it is, I was told today it's being done.
because I imagine these meetings are just going to get more and more.
yeah.
And they're enlarging. Thank you.
And I think there was one other point that was brought up was Rumpke. That, just so you know, is memory serves me correctly, it's a 5-year contract?
Waste management.
Waste management, sorry. Waste management's a 5-year contract. We're 3 or 4 years into that contract, and I do know we have plans to, when it comes up for renewal, to look at that and any other options. At least that's the direction we've given Manager Klein in his office.
It's supposed to go out to bid at the end of this year.
I have a quick question about, like, where we can find your budget, Casey Paste off of Water Street. I just like to see for myself where we're at with the budget and what exactly is taken from that 1%. Especially if you're talking about the II, I'm assuming that's the sewer.
Yes, ma'am.
That's gonna be coming from the general, because the letter made it imply that the sewer bills and the sewer taxes were to be taken care of maintenance.
Go ahead.
Yes, the credit for the income tax is only for the general fund, which funds anything that's not water and sewer related and street maintenance. I&I is water and sewer related. So the income tax, none of the income tax is ever going to go to the fixing of the I&I. I think the example is I&I is one very important issue that has been ignored for 25 years, that EPA is now pressuring us into having to do something, and we simply can't ignore it, but it's going to cost a lot of money.
Okay. But is there, I guess it's on the website somewhere, your budget reports that you've created that would justify the 1% being taken back?
Sure, we can give you a copy of our
I would
budget
love to
too.
see that.
Sure.
Because I am very confused, especially since the police and the fire are only taken from the 0.5%. They're not taken from the general.
They're
No,
taken
no.
from the general fund. That 0.5% is only allowed to be used for police and fire, but that does not come close to covering the police and fire costs.
Okay. And could I just say after the meeting to get that from you, or would?
Yeah, I can make a photocopy of the budget, no problem.
Anybody watching the video, if they wanted to?
Anybody can come, the budget is a public document. It's, anybody can come in, and technically, we're supposed to charge $5 a cop, I'm sorry, 5 cents a sheet by ordinance. But yes, anybody can come in and get a copy of the budget.
See, we watch every last nickel.
And so if I have any questions after reviewing that, I could come on the 4th Tuesday of this month at 7:30 and we could discuss it as a workshop? Is that?
You can
Sure.
discuss it at a workshop, you can call our office any day, 5 days a week. We're here Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If you want to talk to me about the budget, or our finance director, Jill Grice, please.
And then I guess the last thing I have for the May ballot, for that 0.5%, if it does come to be permanent, will it still be only for police and fire? Like, we would not be able to put that in general budget?
That is correct.
Okay.
The only thing that it would make it permanent instead of having to go back to the voters every 5 years. There's no other change.
So we couldn't touch it for anything but police and fire?
Only police and fire.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll point out a couple other things, and I'll make sure you get back up. One of the things that we discovered 3 years ago, that yes, it contributed to spending, but we have a volunteer fire staff, but they do get paid when they're out on runs. And when we had looked into what they were getting paid, it was around $4.50 an hour.
No, it was less than that.
It was less than-
about
Three? Okay.
350 or
So
370.
there are some things that, yes, we have done that have increased expenses, and none of us will try to hide those type things. But I think that most people in the community would want to think, and all we did was raise it so that it stays with minimum wage. I would think that most people would appreciate their firemen showing up to an accident scene or house fire receiving minimum wage. That's a bargain at any price. That was one issue. Another one was, as far as some of the tax money that we have not received, when some of the taxes that were taken away, this was one that was a surprise to me, and I was on council at the time. When the new casinos, when that was passed in Ohio, I think there was a general thought that the monies raised or the monies brought back to the state from those casinos would be spread around a little bit more than what they are. Is there 5 large metropolitan districts like Dayton, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Toledo, Columbus? They are a district, and then each county is a district that receives a portion of those monies that come back from the casinos. That money didn't make it through the county filter into the city budget. Some of those, we were expecting that as certain taxes were eliminated on a state level, and that some of these that were assumed would be passed back to help replace those state figures, they kind of got clogged off in another area and didn't make it back to us.
Basically, what we're expecting is there's a formula where at a county level, they look at the county as a whole, and then every city and village and town in the county, based on population, they get a percentage of those funds that come from the state. And the casino money just stopped at the county. And when it's been asked to the county if that's going to ever come down, the answer's been no.
I'm not trying to throw
Right.
everyone else
But that's
under
just
the
what we were
bus.
expecting, and it didn't happen.
Just kind of trying to show where some of these different problems have come from. Chris, you had another?
Probably for Ben.
Yeah.
The I, or this test that we're supposed to go through. I mean, I mean, if it fails, what's the consequences?
Well, I mean, I'm speaking for another department, but it's infiltration into the sanitary
Right, water's going
line.
in, so
Right.
how do you fix it?
Well, basically, you can fix it in 2 different ways. You seal manholes, keep water from getting in manholes. You replace lines, or you reline sanitary lines. It could be, in worst case scenario, there could be a storm line that back in the 50s, they didn't want to run the storm line, so they just tied it into a sanitary line. These are all things that you have to basically smoke test and camera every single line to figure out exactly where these are taking place at. And right now, they're going about it a really smart way, and that's targeting the absolute worst areas first to cut down the flow as quickly as possible, and then start going back to some of the smaller issues after that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but it's just that the cost, it's a large test.
Yes.
Yes,
It's a very
it is.
expensive test.
And I can tell you just, because none of these people were here, but almost 30 years ago, the idea was build a big pit at the wastewater plant and let the excess water run into the pit. Back then, the EPA said, okay, that's fine. Now they're saying, you can no longer let the water run into the pit, fix your lines. I mean, that was pretty much it. And if you don't do it, then they're going to start fining you large amounts. Well, we all know the EPA is extremely powerful.
That was the federal side of the house.
Did that answer it? Yes, I mean, really, it's Tim's overseeing the
5 years
project,
ago.
but that's it in a nutshell.
I have a question with that, though. Does that whole process, will that include any new storm sewers put in? Because
No. Anything new that's been put in, I'm gonna just say in the last 15 years, I'm just pulling that number out, but about the last 15 years, everything's been inspected daily.
Because I have a
Yeah.
sump pump that pumps to Lee Circle. There's no storm sewer in Lee Circle.
Correct.
So it travels to Beech Nut.
Correct.
And there's no storm sewer in Beech Nut. So it goes all the way down to the corner of Beech Nut and Cedar. And
Yes.
most of the time in the winter, there's a huge ice skating rink and flood up. older people's homes and, you know, not really cool, but.
Well, and I know you haven't been there as long, but one thing we did to combat that was when Cedar Plat was paved, we did kind of an invert on the pavement to keep the water flowing, because it used to be about 3 inches deep right there when it would rain. I mean, it wasn't your fault that you had a sump running on the street with no storm,
Right.
and to run the storm up to there on rock, because there was, basically where the storm's at and where you're at, we don't have the fall to get to that storm,
Okay.
gravity-wise.
Right.
It's just too offset. So our thought was we try to invert the pavement, get the water flowing as good as possible. And I know exactly the people that you're talking about, because I've talked to her, you know, a few times over the years, so it's
that's
helped.
the way it's gonna be though.
Well, in that particular case, I'll say yes until that plat would get, say that plat gets reconstructed down the road, and if that would happen to go along with the INI, then we would absolutely look into extending the storms, because there's other areas in that particular plat, the storms are just non-existent.
Yep.
So that's, yeah, so we would definitely look at doing that, correct.
When they did the smoke testing too, when they find individual homes that are tied in, like from their gutter systems, they require that the homeowners fix that problem, don't they?
Yes, and many of them already have.
Yeah, there was several gutters and sump pumps that were pumped into the wrong system.
They were being put into the sewage line. And so that would be a case where a homeowner would have to fix that on their own. That wouldn't be a city issue.
Now with the backflow valve, would that let the smoke come back through by the sump pump?
It would come out through the actual drain, or the vent drain itself.
But if they had a backflow valve, it would still let the smoke through?
The
I have a
back,
hard time believing I'm the only person that's got water in my crawl space, because nobody else is pumping. Okay, well, this guy's.
No,
I'm not that familiar with the smoke testing that they had done, only because I wasn't with the field crews when they did it, so I can't answer that question.
When we did it, when I was about 16, the company that came through town and did it hired a bunch of us local kids to run around and do it. And they pump a fine mist and a pressurized thing, and any place it's connected, it would come out. Like where, oh gosh, up off 571, that one big field off Hayes Street there, that whole system through there was just smoke was coming out of the ground. If it was, if your gutters were tied in, you'd saw the smoke coming out your gutters. There were some businesses downtown that I think their basements and crawl spaces had smoke coming out of them.
And his question basically is, if his water's running out, will the smoke actually go back through the backflow?
If you got that
And I
valve,
would
that-
say,
Mine's going to the street, but I'm pretty sure my neighbors all have a backflow valve, and that's why, and it's going into the sanitary sewer.
which is possible, and once they get down, right now, if they're starting at the larger level, like the plat level, like the Cedar Plat, eventually they'll get down to the residential level.
They tested us a while ago.
Okay.
Yeah. To be fair, Cedar Plat is one of the worst areas in town. We've identified one large project, but there's basically essentially, there are only 2 places to apply for grants. And the project is so large that it would exceed the actual grant amount. So we're breaking that one big project into 3 separate projects. Cedar Plat is one of those projects that will be applying for a grant to get it fixed. That's something I guess I didn't tell council, but the $3 million project is it's too large. The amount of money for grants for Miami County is only going to be, for all of the counties, for OPWC, is only $1.4 million. So that's the entire county. So it's too big of a project. So we're breaking everything down into 3 separate projects and then applying for grants for OPWC through the county.
I just wanted to state that the radio purchase that you guys did is a great thing to do. Me being local law enforcement, not everyone being with the same FCC or same thing with cities in the butt. Being out on patrol, I had one of my local deputies been calling for help and no one's been able to hear. I called out at a house an active domestic, and no one allows out this call. All right? So just being able to buy this and get everybody on here in town, I think is going to save a lot of people, and it's going to be safer for everybody. My only question is how long do you think it's going to be until it's fully set up?
Till what?
Until what?
Till it's set up.
Till set up. Oh, actually, with this resolution, I can place the order after a purchase order. I would say probably by, within the next 60 days, I'm hoping. And lastly on that, we don't even have any portables anymore. Our portables were junk. Our wastewater department, who are out with dangerous equipment daily, if they're on their own, the particular portables now, they do make a submersible. So if they would happen to, be in danger into a tank or something, they can actually still communicate back to someone. Somebody will hear that they're having trouble, basically. So I'm hoping 60 days. We'll give them their repeater back then after that.
Any other questions or comments? Again, I would like to invite you to come back again. If you have questions, talk to us after a meeting, come to another meeting. If there's papers that you'd like to see, budget numbers, old ordinances, all those things are public record and available to you. I'd ask that you be reasonable with the request. That depending on the certain day that you come in, if the office staff is in the middle of some type of shorthanded emergency, they might need a day to get things printed out for you, but all that stuff is available for you.
And you didn't, maybe you should tell them too, the folks might not know about the council that we formed within council for the budget committee.
We did last year form a budget committee because we realized that there was a lot of other issues in regards to just looking at the budget, where to cut, and that budget committee met several times. The committee was myself as the chair, Mr. Flogel, and
Mr. Miller.
Is he sitting there back there? We met with all the department heads several times over the summer, looked at every line item in everyone's budget, and went back and forth as to where to cut, what needed to be done now, what was on a 3-year plan, what's a 5-year outlook as to what is going to need to be replaced. So as what we said earlier, we're not in a position where we get 4 things that should have been replaced over a 5-year period that didn't get done, and now we're stuck replacing all of them at once. There were comments and questions in regards to the sanity of doing that, but I think everyone on council will agree. It came out to being where it was a good way of looking at the budget and getting a lot of different views and inputs on the budget, and then the committee brought the entire budget to council, and several meetings and discussions took place there. So it is something that we did do a lot of time on, and not putting words in the vice mayor's mouth since she's not here, but she said it was the smoothest budget process she's ever dealt with since being on council. And even though I had a lot of hard decisions, she did say it was the smoothest process she had. So I'd like to thank everyone that was involved in that, because I know it was not easy.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?